all these rejections from the middle Bollinger Band.
Resistance we're going to need.
If you actually see here, we get a
And we'll look for a healthy higher
I
low.
would not
don't have
be
the
convinced
pullback
to
to
enter a long trade.
Hello crypto friends, hope you're having a wonderful Saturday. Bitcoin, ETH, BCH, BNB. Gonna look at some comparison charts, some short charts. We've got a dump going on, and we're gonna keep an eye out for when this bounce is going to get going. So that's what we're gonna be focusing on right now. And forgot to mention the other day we had that free course giveaway. Congrats to the winner. Lee was the answer. Tenacious D. More Tenacious D fans out there than I thought there were in crypto land. So I'm gonna have to do something harder next time. I want the kind of answer that only like 3 people get the right answer. So I'll have to think of a good question. But I ended up seeing Tenacious D at Bonnaroo something like 8 years ago maybe, and they ended up covering a big chunk of the Who album Tommy, which is one of my favorite albums. So that was a pretty fun show. So Bitcoin on the daily time frame, we've now seen 7 red days in a row, and that's the longest red streak in a row on Bitcoin in 2018. So that's significant, and so is the volume behind it. So we had some nice spurts of bull volume on the way up, most notably in these 2 sets of 2 candles. But you can see this is just a wall of red volume, and it is very notable. So what this new leg down today does, and what this amount of volume does, is it increases the odds for the bears on the weekly time frame. So we cannot lose sight that we are in a downtrend, and the fact that on the first week of consolidation, we've pulled back and almost given back half of the move, that is absolutely notable, and it does favor the bears. Look at the volume. If the bulls were going to remain in control on this weekly move, we would see volume, comparable to 3 weeks ago. That kind of red volume, not the kind of red volume and red Marabozu candlestick that shows us the bears in control literally every single day of the week. And again, solid bear volume behind it, matching the bull volume from the previous 2 weeks. We still have another trading day to go. So this volume is going to match the past couple of weeks pretty much. So that's a red flag. No matter any way you cut it, that is a red flag for the bulls. We will be looking for a short-term bounce on this daily time frame, but it's just going to set a lower high like I've been talking about. And we have this comparison to go back to April, the move in April. Again, just checking out the weekly time frame. April was when we saw a month of green in a row, essentially 5 weeks, and we saw 4 out of 5 weeks green here. Very similar moves that were just lower highs on the weekly time frame. So we compare April. April had an initial pullback. There was one bounce day mixed in there, but it had an initial pullback from the high 3, 6, 7 days, and the pullback was about 17.8%. And at this point, the pullback, again, by pressing the shift button and clicking and then dragging, at this point, the pullback here is about the same thing, about 17.8. So that tells me to be keeping an eye out because it's a very similar move to what we saw on the initial top being set and the bears taking over there. We had a 2-3 day bounce and then continuation down. So we're looking for a little 2 to 3 day bounce and for the price to make its way back up. Perhaps, a weak bounce on this daily chart would be $300 to $400 from the low. And at this point, we aren't sure that the bounce has gotten started yet. We're not confident that 69.40 is our low, but if it were, we would be looking for 72 to 7,300. Again, on the weaker end of the spectrum, it would take some pretty significant bull volume in order for us to be looking for more than that. We have exponential resistance as well. That rejected the first back test on the bounce attempt, so we would be watching the exponential daily resistance on this bounce attempt, just like back in April. Very similar in watching how that's going to play out. So 4-hour time frame here, bear flag forming. Again, we've been talking about how the bears are just waiting for 4-hour exponential resistance to get in, and it's been a gift in terms of a guide for establishing trade game plans. We rejected from it. We had a really tight pattern last night that just led to another leg down, and it was our high, low, lower high, higher low, lower high, equilibrium breaking bearish. So the hourly higher lows on the bounce were intact, and as soon as those are lost, it is a red flag that puts the bears back in control of the short term. And the highest higher low was at 74.15. So as soon as that broke, the bears started to run with it, and that's a signal for bulls to exit because the bounce momentum is shifting, and it's a signal for the bears to jump in. And you can see that's certainly what they did with the amount of volume behind it. Inside bar, bear break, inside bar, bear break. Lots of bear signals here. We still have a bounce trying to develop, but it's a very weak bear flag bounce. We have exponential resistance on the hourly to be watching. again, there's very little bull volume behind this move and very little convincing action. So again, the 4 hour is a potential bear flag. We're watching exponential resistance as it's going to continue dropping down. If we do see another leg down and a lower high and lower low here with this bear flag being confirmed, this 4 hour RSI is going to be down at about 22 to 20 very quickly. There is a base of support at 6,800. Previous resistance now becomes support. So you can see all these resistance levels there. That's the support that we're watching. If we get another leg down, 6,800 is going to be that target. And I do believe that there's a lot of people waiting there because they do know that that is a important support level. Hourly RSI has cooled off on this bounce. So again, the bear flag scenario, without a significant bounce, RSI has gone from 19 all the way back up to 25 and cooled off significantly, with the price only bouncing at this point $50. Actually, a little bit more than that, $67. That is not significant at all. That is a very weak bounce attempt. The bulls are not proving anything to me. Remember when we used to see V-shaped recoveries with significant volume and bulls buying the dip? Obviously, that's the best case scenario for the bulls. This is worst case scenario for the bulls because it cools off RSI and it allows for another leg down. Is it possible that this is the low and the bulls can pull this off? Absolutely. But on the order book, I was just watching this bounce because we broke a 15-minute equilibrium bullish, extremely tight, grinding exponential resistance. We broke it bullish with very little follow through, and I was watching the order book on just Coinbase, and Coinbase doesn't have a whole lot of volume compared to Bitfinex and Binance, but I was just seeing someone is stacking 10 asks, every 10 Bitcoin, less than every dollar. So it was, 727, 728, 728.89, 729, 730 of just 10, 10, 10, 10. And that's a pretty decent amount here because the highest 15-minute volume candlestick that we've seen in a couple of hours is 118 Bitcoin. So if you've got 50 Bitcoin stacked within a $10 range, we're not getting through that level without a significant spike up in volume. So I am still skeptical here. I do have a position this morning. I made a very quick flip on the first pullback and sold it very quickly in terms of a bounce from something like 72.21. Here we go is what I played this bear flag. Entered 72.21, exited 72.61 just to cover my massage for the day. And then we dropped down to another leg down. So then I started scaling in again. And at this point, I have about a 60% position with an average about 70, 88 or something along those lines. And I'm pretty comfortable. If we do see another leg down, I do have orders that I'm going to be placing down around that 6,800 mark. And if we see some further follow through, I will exit some of my position and free up even more cash if we do see another leg down. So I'm going to be watching hourly exponential resistance as a potential area that I would exit some more. And again, just remaining cautious, doing my usual game plan. If you've been watching these videos, done it plenty of times where we see bear flags, and that's an opportunity where I exit some of my position and free up capital just to average down again. Because at this point with this daily chart, 7 red days in a row, I am confident that we are going to see a bounce soon enough that I'm not looking to, have to bail on all of my position if we see another leg down, because I would rather just add to it, average down, get that average around 7,000, and then patiently just wait for the short-term bounce. Bears at this point are not looking for any kind of entry until we cool off the RSI a little bit more significantly. In my opinion, if I were a bear, I would probably be waiting for the 4-hour exponential again. We've dipped far enough below it, and the daily chart is overdone enough that I know risk to reward isn't that great for the bears. But one thing I'm noting on this shorts chart, shorts aren't really covering, and shorts were going up as the RSI was extreme levels. And oftentimes we see shorts start to cover when those RSI levels get extreme. Not in this instance. In the daily time frame, we can see a solid move up from 18,000 up to 20,600 just today in shorts. So 2,600 shorts being added to Bitfinex, and that definitely adds up. That pressure is still there. And we look at the hourly time frame, a little bit of covering is going on this little weak bounce attempt on the hourly time frame. But again, it's the kind of move that we're seeing. You have to put yourself, if you're a bull, put yourself in the bear's position. We're not doing anything. The bulls are not doing anything to scare the bears. They're not giving any reason to cover their positions because this move is not seeing any bull volume behind it, and it is not, anything convincing. So we have to keep that in mind, that bears have all the confidence in the world right now, and it's up to the bulls to make them a little bit uneasy, make them want to lock in profit, and they're just not doing it at this point. So we do still have a little 15-minute higher low uptrend attempting to form here. Again, it's a very weak one, and it doesn't have me beaming with confidence here. So I'm going to be watching. If this 15-minute higher low is lost, we're going to be looking to head back down towards 6,800. And if we do the daily chart, I mean, the last time, I believe a member said the last time we had 8 red days in a row was back in 2015 or 16, and the price was down around $300, $400. So it's been a long time, and we know we're due for a bounce, but there's just absolutely no sign of it at this point. So bulls need to remain cautious. Checking in on Ethereum. Ethereum's holding up a lot better. This is one of those scenarios where ETH BTC pairing is increasing just because Ethereum is not pulling back as much as Bitcoin. It's not because Ethereum is seeing a strong bounce. It's because Ethereum is not dumping as hard. So the weekly time frame, this candlestick is back to looking weak, confirming the bear flag. The daily time frame, trying for the bullish reversal candlestick yesterday, absolutely no follow through nor confirmation today. Lower highs. How many days in a row have we seen a lower high on ETH? And the answer is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we had one pretty much a double top there, so being a little bit lenient. But let's say 10 lower highs in a row on the daily. That pattern clearly has to break if the bulls are going to get any kind of follow through. So at this point, we have not broken the low of yesterday. And we look at Bitcoin, and obviously we broke well below the low of yesterday. So that's where the ETH BTC bounce, there's that weekly candlestick, that's where it's starting. And we're going to look at that in just a second. But ETH on the 4-hour time frame, trying to hold a higher low. So a little bit more progress. We have the low, solid bounce, and then trying to form that higher low. And to change the trend, we're going to need to see a bull break over 420.27. And we've got multiple 4-hour inside bars right now. Again, this bounce is not really giving a lot of confidence for the ETH bulls as well. If we want to get an even tighter range on ETH to be watching, it's support of 404 and resistance of 409. So ETH BTC, weekly equilibrium. This is a very key level that the bulls are defending. 536 was support. We're bouncing off 5412. So solid bullish reversal candlestick on the weekly. The daily time frame, 2 solid bull days. Still lower highs though. Don't lose sight that the trend is still bearish. We have the last lower high. The weak bounce attempt was 588, and we just topped out at 585. So it is still a daily lower high pattern. There is solid bull volume behind it. This is the most convincing bounce attempt that this chart has seen in almost a month. So that is notable. The bulls have to form a daily higher low and then see continuation to a higher high in order to be looking for this weekly equilibrium to maintain and for this bounce to follow through. So I am going to potentially be considering ETH next time around if the bulls do follow through with this daily chart and give us a higher low and set us up for a higher high. Perhaps the next trade that I do make, rather than being Bitcoin, which has had the attention, it might be ETH. All depends on how this chart looks. Just a quick comparison. We're not looking at Litecoin today, but just looking at the LTC BTC chart to see if the same deal is going on. And it is. The daily chart's been bouncing. Still clearly lower highs. We did get a little mini higher low and higher high in there, trying to shift that momentum. And we're seeing an instance where the altcoins are making a bit of a comeback. And the reason for that is Bitcoin is pulling back so significantly. Essentially, we saw momentum shift as soon as Bitcoin lost the first higher low on the daily. And that's when we knew, the bears are about to take over with our weekly lower high being set. As soon as we lost that level and the real consolidation started and the bulls pretty much said, all right, our top is in for now, it's time to consolidate. That's when the alts started to rise. And again, it's not necessarily meaning the alts USD pairings are strong. It's just meaning that the alt BTC pairing is not seeing weakness. Or I should say the alt USD pairing is not seeing the same amount of weakness as BTC USD. So the Bitcoin pairing goes up. So Ethereum 4-hour equilibrium to watch, even a little hourly equilibrium to watch if you want to zoom in a bit more. Checking in on BCH. So BCH USD, the weekly time frame, heading down to support of 648.65, and then 603.30 is the only support we have here on Coinbase with a pretty limited history. So if we keep dropping down to the 600 level, we're going to have to look at a different chart for different price history. Daily chart at this point, 6 red days in a row, taking out all kinds of support. 661.73 is a support level, as is 648.65. So we're still above those levels. We are anticipating, again, a bounce and a lower high to be set before those levels do break. The 4-hour time frame is not even really a bear flag. The bounce hasn't even been big enough to be considered a bear flag. It's multiple 4-hour inside bars. The RSI is not oversold right now. Hourly time frame, very weak bounce attempt, and just no follow through on the bounce at this point. 15-minute resistances, 702, 704, You can pick out all kinds of resistances, 713, and the bulls have to prove themselves with volume. Again, the number one thing that's making it very easy for me to not trust this bounce by the bulls at this point is volume. If volume picks up and we start to see notable increases, then that changes things. But you zoom in and you say, oh, we got increasing 15-minute bull volume. Just zoom out and see what the bears put together and how that compares to it. And you can see it's not even comparable. So again, I am very skeptical that our low is in, but if the bull volume picks up and we see a move up over 7,100, then we'll say, okay, that's now a pretty legitimate bounce, and we'll look to see the exponential resistances on longer term time frames like the 4-hour if we were to get over those levels. BNB USDT. Let's look at the weekly. Again, we held that weekly support to maintain higher lows, but no follow through this week. Inside bar is going to form on the weekly. So we have a tightening equilibrium, which is what the inside bar on a greater time frame shows us. It's a tightening equilibrium on a smaller time frame. High, low, lower, high. Bulls must hold $13 for a higher low. Our resistance is 1447 and 1487. So a tightening range is forming, and the bulls need to defend that support and then try and break that resistance to follow through. If we do not, and if we break $13, the odds that we're going to break this weekly double low of support down at 1163 and 61, those odds will increase. So anytime you break an uptrend on a smaller term time frame, the odds that you're going to break bearish on the longer term time frames increase. So just to review, we were doing that for Ethereum. We said as long as the daily higher lows are held, the weekly bear flag is still a possibility, but as soon as we lose the daily higher lows, that's when the odds of the bear flag increase significantly, and that was the clear signal, and it just did nothing but follow through for the bears. So what I just pointed out on Bitcoin, 15-minute higher low pattern, if we lose that 15-minute higher low pattern, the odds that it is a bear flag on the hourly time frame will increase significantly. So that's where we are for today. Congrats to the bears. It's been a gift of a week for the bears. They have been killing it, and it's been easy. Again, they have no fear because the 4-hour downtrend has been very, very clear at this point for pretty much the entire week. And that's where we stand. And that's not going to change anytime soon, even on this bounce. Just a 4-hour lower high is coming. So the daily bounce will start to follow through as soon as we change the 4-hour trend, which isn't happening anytime soon. So I appreciate you watching. I hope you all continue to do good things. Had a bit of a, let's see, I had a story. I remembered a story while driving, and also had an epiphany about Renee, the homeless dude. So first off the story, back when I was in college, I used to road trip home from the coast of North Carolina to Massachusetts in a 14-hour drive. And, that was for vacations or holidays or whatever. And I would be able to do that in one sitting. Sometimes I would stop and just fill up gas and just go the whole way. And I burned myself out. I can only do like 4 hours in a row now. But there was a time where 12 to 14 hours was easy. I probably did that half a dozen times, no problem. But one time, I had gone to a car place before to get my oil changed and all that. And he said, hey, your tire, the lining is separating from the tire, but there's no risk of blowout. It's something you just want to get, looked at soon. So, of course, 4 hours into my road trip, my tire blows out on the highway, which is a big deal. That's a very dangerous thing. Fortunately, it was in the middle of the night. Nobody was on the road. And it gave me a heads up in the sense that, things started to vibrate crazy. So I started to slow down. Something's wrong. And then the tire blew out. But ended up in the middle of nowhere, Virginia at 2 or 3 in the morning and on the side of the road. So sitting there, doing the AAA thing, just waiting for someone to come. And next thing I know, a pickup truck, a 1970s pickup truck with a heap of junk in the back pulls up in front of me. So I'm, 21 years old at the time, and definitely, my senses are now heightened because I am literally in the middle of nowhere. And so I see the door to the truck open up, and crushed cans of either Natty Ice or, pick your terrible beer of choice fell out of his car. And he swings his leg down. He's got one leg, and he starts hopping over to my car after tossing another one of his beer cans in the back of his truck. So I have my window down a crack, and of course remaining very protective. I don't know what kind of weapons I had in the car, maybe a tire iron or something like that. But he got to the car, asked me if I was all right, and his first thing was, he ended up being a fine guy, so I didn't judge him too hard, but just wanted to be prepared. But his first statement was, "Oh man, I thought you were a damsel in distress. I saw your hair." So he thought he was about to hit his lucky day in terms of helping a broken down woman on the side of the road in the middle of the night, but ended up just telling him I was fine, calling AAA, and he ended up putting one of his cheap beers through the window slot that I had down for me while I was on the phone with AAA. And turns out, I had to sleep in a parking lot that night in my car while I waited for, something to open the next day to deal with me. And that crappy beer was my night maker. That definitely helped and made it easier to sleep in my car that night. So never judge a book by its cover is the lesson of the story. Another thing I was thinking about while I was driving is the homeless guy, Renee, I've talked about a couple times that I've met around town here, and how if I see him again, really what I want to do is have a real conversation with him in terms of, like I said, he's a really intellectually intelligent guy. So he could be addicted to something. I have no idea. That's one of the questions I want to ask him. What do you want to do with your life? You're clearly in a spot that you're in a cycle where any money that you get goes towards putting a hostel room so you don't have to sleep on the street. But that's a cycle that's never going to end. So, what is your goal? Are you trying to get out of Key West? Are you trying to get a job? What would you like to do with your future? And a lot of people, that's really the hardest thing is determining a goal. I find it's really easy to work towards a goal and, have that task and that progress. I feel that we have a whole lot of power in our lives in terms of visualizing what we want and then working towards it. But a lot of people don't know what they want. And so if you're skipping that step number one, it's really hard to get to a productive path because you have no idea what you're working towards. So trying to hammer that down would be step number one. What do you want? And then trying to think of solutions towards that. So that's step number one. Hopefully I run into him again and we'll see what we can make of it. Because it's the kind of thing where it's like, if he's like, yeah, I want to get out of here and I want to get a job. And if he was like willing to apply to places, I would potentially put him up somewhere for a month to give him, a bit of a cushion and a head start. But I would only do that if, he's not just spending his money on drugs or alcohol and just, obviously going to piss it away. So that would definitely need to be apparent in our conversation. But that's something that I'm going to be considering, and I'm sure I'm going to run into him again. And I hope you all consider doing a good thing or two. And we'll see you tomorrow. I'll do an altcoin video as well tomorrow with a few extra names. And I will see you then. Thanks again. And got a little clip here of a rooster. The chickens are all over the place in Costa Rica or in Key West here, and I love it. There's baby chickens running everywhere. And you're not supposed to feed them, but sometimes I drop some food. But this is just a rooster, and I love hearing them crow in the morning. Some people it annoys them, but I miss it from the farm out, obviously. And to be able to just drive through town and hear roosters crowing all over the place, pretty cool stuff. So we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks again.